All right. So again, today we're going to go over the Ascribe Coder basics. Going to start out with the layout and then talk a little bit about searching and selecting responses, talk about applying codes and selecting codes, and adding codes to the code book. So just some of the coding basics in Ascribe Coder. So I'm going to navigate to Supervisor Studies. And I am there we go. And I've got a webinar study set up here. I'm going to right-click on that and go to Questions. And I'm going to go ahead and just go right on into the dislikes question. I'm going to right-click on it and go into Ascribe Coder. Note that today I am using Chrome as my browser. And when I'm navigating, when I'm using Chrome, you'll notice that I don't have access to review responses or code this question or phrase analyzer, again, because I'm using Chrome. If I were using IE, I would still have access to all of those tools as well. All right, so I'm navigating into Ascribe Coder. And if my machine doesn't pick up and move a bit faster, I may ask Julie or Antoine, one of you guys, to drive. So actually give me 1 second, because what I'm going to do is just make sure that my backup keeps trying to run while I'm working. So I just want to make sure that that's not what's going on here. So just give me a second. Thank you guys for bearing with me for a sec. I've already turned it off twice. Make sure. All right, we should be fine. Okay, so this is Ascribe Coder, and what you see on the right side of the screen, and again, it is set up like review responses. We've got our code book over here on the right side of the screen with the nets in bold and the codes nested under the nets. Above the code book, we do have a toolbar that gives us all of our tools for our code book. And at the bottom of the screen, we have our question information. That question information, you can use the little resizer bars to size that so that it shows the question information that you need to see. You can minimize that by clicking on the little toggle button on the resizer bar and bring it back up. So if you want to leave the question information up, you can, or you can close it. Okay? Then on the left side of the screen, this is our response pane. This is where we'll be returning responses. But before I get to that, you'll notice that we have 2 tabs here, one with 3 dots. That means that I'm in the code multiple response mode. One with 1 dot that puts me in my single response coder mode. We're going to be focusing mainly on the multiple response coder mode today. Then we have our tools above our response pane. We'll be talking a little bit about some of these tools today. And then to the far left of the response pane toolbar is our navigation icon. And that navigation icon gives us access to our help system. It also gives us access to other areas in Ascribe. So this is how we will navigate. This is kind of the new face of Ascribe, the modernized version of Ascribe. As we rewrite tools and as we bring Ascribe forward, you'll be seeing more and more of these navigation icons in the Ascribe interface because our right-click navigation has been eliminated. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do here is actually go ahead and, well, one more thing about the layout. You'll notice there's also a resizer bar between the response pane and the codebook pane, so that allows us to resize the pane so that it works for us, and that does stick from session to session. And then there's a toggle button on that resizer bar that actually allows us to just go into edit the codebook mode. So this is just for editing the codebook. The response pane is minimized while we're doing that. Okay, so if you ever wanted to edit the codebook without, and have more screen real estate for editing the codebook, you could do that. All right. One more thing. Today I am logged in as a new user, so all of my defaults are in place here. So one of the first things that that I want to do, Julie, are you seeing my mouse moving?
No, I'm not. There, now it's moving.
I wasn't showing my screen. Well, that's nice, but that's okay. There we go. Thank you, Anthony, for that. All right. So again, I was talking about the resizer bars. I think most of us know where those are and how we minimize and expand the little resizer bars. We've got the code book on the right side of the screen with the code book tools. On the left side of the screen, we'll be returning our responses with our response tools. And this is, of course, the multiple response mode and the single response mode. There we go. And, of course, the navigation icon is up here at the top left. So that's the layout. Now, one of the first things I want to talk about is actually returning responses. And you'll notice the first tool we have in our response pane toolbar is our search. This search corresponds with the expression tester that we have in review responses, and this is one of the ways that we can bring responses up for coding. Okay, if you want to search for regular expressions, you will need to toggle on the regular expression box. Otherwise, it's just doing a straight search. Okay, regular expression mode allows us to use things like the bar symbol and the little greater than, less than symbols for those of you that use regular expressions. Okay, I'm not going to go into great detail on what those symbols mean today. I just wanted to make sure we know that if we want this to work like the expression tester does today, then we would toggle this regular expression option on. Now, the next thing about the search is the show only box. Okay, so the show only box by default is blank. That means that we're looking for both uncoded responses and coded responses. Okay, so when the show only box is blank and we've got new search toggled on and we hit go, we're going to bring up all the responses, both coded and uncoded, that match this text. Okay, so you'll note that some of these responses have codes applied, some do not. Note also that I searched for the word static and for the word hair. Okay, and so static and hair are both highlighted in red. All right, so that's how the search works. This time again, I showed both coded and uncoded. I also have the choice to bring up just my uncoded. So now I'm bringing up my uncoded. And a little more about this response pane. By default, we only show the verbatim. Okay? If you're interested in seeing other things about your verbatim, then you would click on the little gear up here, which are our response settings. And then you could choose what to display. This is your display box. So if you want to show the respondent ID, then you can toggle on respondent ID. If you prefer that respondent ID to be on the same line as the verbatim, then you would toggle off the place text on new line. Okay? By default, the respondent ID is in red. That means absolutely nothing. It has no meaning. The coding quality is now this little icon that appears in front of, when you turn on the coding quality icon, it's the little bubble that you can check to turn on to say this is quality coded. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I said that too. If you prefer your respondent ID to be black, boom, you can turn that off as well. You can turn it back to black by turning off the respondent ID red. Okay, that's usually a setting that I'll play around with. But again, by default, we only see our verbatims, and you get to choose what you'd like to display. Okay. We'll talk a little bit more about that if I get to the shared code books today. All right, so I'm now showing my uncoded responses. Another thing to note when we return responses, our statistics about our responses are at the top of the screen here or above our responses. And the statistics show us that we are returning 66 responses, so 66 out of 348, or 18.9% of the responses are displayed on my screen right now. Once I start selecting responses by clicking on them, it tells me how many I have selected. So I've selected 3 out of 66 responses right now. Okay, so I always know how many responses I have selected. If I'd like to apply a code to these responses, then all I have to do is click on the code that I'd like to apply, or the codes that I'd like to apply. And notice when I do that, it applies the code, and the code highlights in yellow. So again, I select the responses I'd like to apply a code to, and then I click on the code that I'd like to apply. All right? So that's how we apply codes. That's one of the ways that we apply codes in this window. And I always know how many responses I have selected here. I can deselect responses by clicking on them, select by clicking, deselect by clicking, or I could right-click and hit deselect all, and it deselects everything. All right, so that's one way to apply codes. I can also apply codes by dragging a code to a response. So I can just drag, well, I can just drag a code to a response to apply it. All right? Now, if I have responses selected and I drag a code to apply it, notice that that code only applies to the response that I drop it on. Okay? So codes, when we're dragging and dropping, it's a one-at-a-time coding process. It doesn't matter, it's irrelevant what I have selected when I drag and drop. That is the fundamental difference between this screen and review responses. Okay? We have separated that, we have separated the select and then drag and drop to apply codes. Okay? When we select here, we just have to click on the code to apply it. When we're drag and dropping, we're just applying one code to one response. Okay? And that applies also for dragging a code from one response to another. Okay? We can also drag a code, an applied code, from one response to another to basically apply that code. So those are the most popular ways that we have to apply codes in this window. All right, so talking a little bit more about the statistics up here at the top. Again, we know that that first number is the number of responses we have displayed. I've got 66 responses displayed on my screen right now. If I hit my Search Again button, it's going to just bring up, again, those responses that have the word static or hair in them that are uncoded. So now I've got 55 responses showing on my screen that match my search. There are no codes applied to these responses. If I decide I want to apply a code to all of these responses, I can hit Select All and then apply a code to all of these responses. Okay? So now I've applied one code to all of those responses. If I want to remove a code, I can just drag it. And by default, when I remove codes, even if it's one code at a time, I will get this little pop-up, this little dialog box. That's usually one of the first things that I change is on my Applied Codes tab. I turn off the prompt confirmation when receiving a single code, or removing a single code, not receiving. And that deletes that code without giving me that pop-up. One other thing that I like to do on Applied Codes that we asked for, the users group asked for this. We wanted the ability to remove a code without having to right-click on it or without having to drag it, so we can just hit the trash can. And that, again, is by using the Applied Codes Remove Code button option. So notice the Remove Code button puts a little trash can there. Okay? All right. And actually, we'll just leave that guy on there for now. So let's do another search. And this time, let's bring up responses with any code applied. So now I'm going to bring up my coded responses that have the word static or hair. So this tells me that I'm showing 61 responses. None of them are currently selected, so 0 out of 61 are selected. Now 1 out of 61 is selected. There are 73 codes applied to these 61 responses, and currently none of those codes are selected. I can select 1, select 2, whatever, select 3. Notice that when I'm hovering over these codes, it's giving me some information about the code that was applied. It's giving me the output code ID, 417, the input code ID, 417, who applied this code. That's my username, Laura, April 7th a.m., the time it was coded, and how it was coded. They were all manually applied, or this one was manually applied. Okay? If we do not like seeing that information, we have an option to turn off the code tooltips. And when the code tooltips are turned off on the Appearance tab, we will not see that information if that's getting in your way. Okay? So that's in the Appearance and its code tooltips. Also, we have this option to turn off the logo at the bottom if you want more screen real estate. So when I turn off that logo, it's going to take that guy away. All right. So we have talked about applying codes. We've talked about selecting responses to apply codes, deselecting responses to apply codes. The next thing that I want to talk about is the ability to, well, do I want to talk about that now? Sure. So we've talked about that, any code applied, uncoded responses, the new search. Let me go ahead and bring up all my uncoded responses and hit go. All right. So now I've got all my uncoded responses brought up, and there's another option that I wanted to talk about, and why am I not seeing it here? That's okay, and that's coding by regular expressions. So another way that we can apply codes is by putting regular expressions in behind the individual codes. So notice when I look at the code properties for my price code, it says expensive price. All right? And the regular expression is looking for the word price, the word expensive, and cost too much. I'm going to just change that down to cost and hit OK. And do another search. Okay. So notice that some of our responses have a word underlined. It's just a hyperlink created by that regular expression in the individual codes. So if I would like to go ahead and take the suggestion that it's making, and when we hover over it, we'll see that this one is actually suggesting the nothing code. If I'm happy with that, I can just click on that and accept the suggestion or apply the code. Okay? So that's regular expression coding. All right. So we can drag drop to apply codes. We can click on the regular expression hyperlink to apply codes. Or we can select multiple responses. And then click on a code to apply codes. Those, again, are the three most popular ways to apply codes. Once a code is applied over here, of course, we can drag it and drop it to apply it to another response. All right. There is one other way to code, and it's another mode. And what we would do is actually turn on this Apply Selected Codes button. Okay? So let me go ahead and right-click and deselect everything on this side of the screen. And the Apply Selected Codes button allows us to do, allows us to select codes in the code book. So if I select my nothing code in my code book, I can then go through and say, okay, I want that code applied there. And really, it's kind of given us a shortcut to applying that code. Okay? So I go through and click all my none-nothings. Now, something you might note here is, hey, what if I want to sort my responses? Laura's going through and clicking on all these none-nothings. What if I want to see those all at the top? We do have a sorting option, and usually I've got mine sorted by verbatim length and then by verbatim. Once I change that sort and refresh my search, now all the shorties should be up here at the top. So I've got 3 nuns here in a row. All right. I can actually right-click and select all same, and it would select all 3 of those nuns, and then click on that to apply that nothing code. So I can do it that way, or I can actually select that nothing and click 1, 2, 3 to apply that code. All right? Or we have yet one other way to deal with duplicates. Let me uncode these guys. And the next way to deal with duplicates is an applied codes option, and it's called code duplicates. Now I want to talk a little bit about code duplicates. Code duplicates allows us to code all of these, it looks at all 348 responses, okay? It looks, even if we have a filter set, it's going to look for duplicates outside of that filter. And I just want to make sure that I explain that to everybody, that it's looking at all the responses in our current coding pool. So our current coding pool is 348 responses. And it's going to code all of them the same way, okay? And basically, what I can do is I apply this code to one of these guys, and it applies to all of them. In this case, last coded was 1 with 2 duplicates. Just wanted to make sure I explained how the duplicates work. Okay. So now let's talk for a second about, and what time do we have here? Okay, we're good. Let's talk for a second about the actual code book and what we see in our code book. Let me turn off, I'm going to go back to my responses, and this applied selected codes button, I call that targeted coding. And again, remember that when we're doing targeted coding, we select the code or codes in the code book. I should show that we can do multiples. And then click on the target to apply the selected codes to the verbatim. So if there's ever a time when you need to apply multiple codes together, this might be a good one. Or if there's one code that you want to set a shortcut to, I've seen that done, where you set a shortcut for just that one code, keep that one code selected, and then continue to code with all your other tools, and then you just know that when you hit that target, you're going to apply that one code. Okay? That's how the targeted coding works. When you select codes, you want to make sure that you're clicking to the right or left of the code to select them. If you click on it and you have something selected in your on the response pane, and you click on it, it's going to apply just that code to the response that you have selected. Okay? So it's just important to know that to select the code, you click to the outside. There is a codebook setting that would allow you, and there's actually response settings that allow us to have to actually click a toggle or toggle a box to select a code or a response. And those settings are actually, let me go ahead, called the selection checkbox. So you see that selection checkbox there in this selection checkbox. When you have the selection checkboxes turned on, then you have to go and you have to actually click to select. You can't select a response without checking the checkbox. Okay? Some people have found it easier that way, that they're not inadvertently selecting things. So again, that's the selection checkbox, which some people are finding quite helpful while they're coding. So they're sure, they're selecting what they need to select. Okay? So again, to select the code, we click outside of it. To apply that code to selected responses, we click on the code, okay, when it's underlined. All right. Cool. So now let's talk a minute about the codebook side of the screen. When the codebook is locked, so you'll note that we have a little lock here, and only people with supervisor privilege can unlock a codebook. If you do not have supervisor privileges, you will not be able to unlock the codebook. And I'm going to focus on the things that we can do with a locked codebook today. Okay? First thing with our codebook, usually we like to show our counts, and usually we like to have our output ID showing. You control what you're seeing using your settings. Again, the settings are the little gear up here. And if you're a person who wants to see your regular expressions, you can turn on your regular expressions. Again, you control what you're seeing. If you need to see long help, you can turn on your long help. If you need to see hover help, you can turn on your hover help. For those of you that need to see it, you know what long help and hover help are, so I'm not going to go into details on that right now. All right. I have turned on my counts, and with my counts turned on my codebook node, I see that I've coded 170 responses out of the 348 that are in my current response pool, or 48%. The counts and percentages that are behind my codes, the percentages that are behind my codes are based on this number, 348. Okay? In review responses today, those counts are based on this number, on what's being coded. So that's another difference between review responses and Ascribe coder. So these hover help tooltips are driving me nuts, so I'm going to turn those off. That's what you were seeing when I'm hovering over, so I'm turning those guys off so they don't show up. I don't need those today. All right. So again, with the codebook locked, I can show my counts and percentages. I can also show my output IDs. Also, with the codebook locked, I can actually right-click on a code and choose Code Properties and change the properties of my code. If I need to change the color of my code, then I'll click on one of these colors that are here, and it will show me the color that the code will be over here to the left of the little color bar. Okay? And then, of course, I've got access to all of my code properties, my input ID, output ID, regular expressions, so on and so forth. Okay? So that's how I would edit a code. Right-click Code Properties and edit my code. I can also add a new code. So if I need to insert a new code, I can right-click on the code that I'd like it to appear under and choose Insert Code. And this is my new code. Okay? Right now, I believe it's probably adding codes in increments of 10. So if I want to change that, I can change my codebook properties and add codes in increments of 1. And now when I add my next new code, it's going to suggest the next available code. All right. So I can add codes or insert codes when my codebook is locked. I can edit codes. I can insert codes. I can delete an unused code. So I can right-click on a code and hit delete and get rid of it. So if I want to get rid of one of these codes, right-click delete, and away it goes, deleting my unused codes. All right. Also, if I've got a big editing task ahead of me, I can actually toggle the focus, and Control-click also acts for toggling the focus, and you'll notice that now my code is green. And what that allows me to do is use my arrow keys. It actually allows me to use my keyboard to edit my codes. Okay, so if I needed to quickly go through and do a few things, maybe I'm going to go through and add a few regular expressions. I can add that, use my mouse to go down, enter, tab down, enter, and keep going. So I'm on my keyboard working when I've toggled my focus. It allows me, again, the arrows work. Also, if I wanted to insert a new code, when I hit the Insert button, it will insert a code below the code that I'm on. Well, hit Enter, and it adds that code. Hit Insert again, and there's my next new code. So this is kind of a quick way to edit your code book, and that's the toggle focus option that we have. I can toggle it off by right-clicking or control-click and it toggles it off. Okay, so those are the main things that we can do in our code book. Now, there's a couple of other things to talk about for the basics, and one of those is our word list. I know we're all used to using the expression tester to bring up our responses in review responses, but we now have this option to use our word list to bring responses up. And our word list, so say we're doing a brand new study that we're just not used to and maybe we don't have a code book for it yet, what we can do is use the word list to bring up responses that have a certain word in them. So we can quickly go through and say, okay, we've got some price responses come up. What are they saying about price? Do I need a code for price? And it brings them up. Right now, let me just look at my options. It's bringing up, it is actually searching the verbatim, and it should be searching all responses, and it's bringing up those that match price. Now hold on one second, make sure. Yeah, okay. Hit that one more time, because I believe that it also does interact a little bit with what we've last done. Let's click on picture. There we go. Okay, so that's bringing up the coded and the uncoded. So yes, that's the word list. It allows us to kind of quickly go through and find the responses that match a certain word or that have a certain word in it. Okay, so that's another way to search. So what if we want to bring up responses that have a certain code applied to them? Say we want to bring up all the responses that have not control eliminate static applied. Then I can right-click on not control eliminate, or I can select not control eliminate static and right-click and hit search any. And it's going to bring up all the responses that have not control eliminate static. So 55 responses have not control eliminate static. Maybe I even want to go ahead and select this code in all responses, and then right-click and remove this code in all selected codes because I didn't like the way any of those were coded. So now all my not control eliminate statics have been removed. And what if I want to bring up responses that have not control eliminate static? Let me find not control eliminate static. There it is. Or unable to apply when wet. Okay. I'm going to right-click and hit search any, and it's going to bring up the responses that have not control eliminate static and unable to apply when wet. Okay, and I'm going to remove unable to apply when wet from a few of these. And now let's say that we want to bring up the responses that have either not control eliminate static or unable to apply, or no, that have not control eliminate static and unable to apply. Then I'm going to hit search all. And it should bring up all of them. Oh, I didn't. I removed all my not control eliminate statics. But I'll try again here. Search any. Okay, and then if I search all, I should have at least one here. There we go. So again, we have our search any and our search all, which used to be the buttons at the bottom of the screen in review responses. They're in our right-click menu. And what we have to do is select the codes that we'd like to search for, and we select them again using the double arrows. Okay? All right. Go through here and see. I believe that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about. Actually, one more thing, the swap, because I know a lot of us use swap. Let me just bring up all of my coded responses and talk for a second about swapping codes. Okay, let's say that I wanted to swap, let's say I wanted to swap nothing for don't know. Okay, I don't know if I still have code dupes on or not, but what I do is select the codes that I'd like to swap, pull the code that I'd like to swap them with, or that I'd like to replace them with, over, and drop it, and it's going to tell me how many I have selected, if there are any duplicates, and in total how many will be swapped. I hit swap codes, and they were all swapped. Okay. The swap works, and I'll go down here to show you. The swap works, you can actually swap out different codes. So if I want to replace all 3 of these codes with my new code, all I have to do is select those 3 and hit new code, and it's gonna switch out. Oh, one thing to note, I don't want to do that because I've got 12 codes selected here. I didn't, and this is something to note, I didn't deselect these guys. So I'd first want to deselect these guys, and I could right-click and deselect all same or whatever. And now I want to swap out. I've only got 3 selected. So now I want to swap out those guys for my new code. There we go. So it's telling me I've got 3 selected. Shows me the outputs of the 3 that I have selected, and it's going to replace them with the new code. There we go. All right. So that's how the swap works. Okay, guys. Those are the main things that I wanted to make sure I covered today, just some of the basics, some of the getting started stuff. Are there any questions, or Julie, has anything come up while we were going through this
Yes, I've got one
today?
question.
Oh, good.
Can you show how to copy a word to a note?
Oh, sure, sure. So one of the things I didn't show today was the notes field, and I know a lot of us use the notes field to track other mentions and such. So notice in my response settings, I have this option for edit. Okay. First of all, I can edit a note by right-clicking and hitting edit and then typing in my notes field. But notice, even though I've edited the note, it doesn't show up immediately. If I'd like to show my notes, then I can turn on my notes field and it will show the note. Okay? The note appears with a pencil in front of it. So this is a note. So now if I need to edit another note, hit edit and I can type another note. Hit OK, and it automatically shows it for me. I can't edit it on the page right now. Okay? If I want to edit notes, then I would turn on my Edit Notes field. And notice, when I turn on Edit Notes, it automatically puts the note field behind every verbatim. So, and the note again has a little pencil and a box behind it. Now, I prefer to have all of my verbatim information on one line, but you might want your note on a different line than your verbatim. And if you want to do that, then you would change this place text on new line, okay? But I prefer mine I prefer to have more responses on my screen, so I kind of push everything together here. So now I can actually take a note this way. Type in a new note. But what if I want to actually, what we can do today is actually highlight and add to the notes field. If I want to do that, there's a couple things I have to do. I have to turn off this drag response to copy coding. Drag response to copy coding allows me to drag a response and drop it on another and copy all the codes. So if I wanted all these codes to be applied to this response, then I could drag it and it would automatically apply all those codes to that response. We're not going to use that too often, so I usually tell people to go ahead and turn that drag response to copy coding off. And with that turned off, I can actually highlight a piece of my response, and in IE, I can then drag that to my notes field. But in Chrome, I Control-C and Control-V to get it. Well, come on. In Chrome, I Control-C and then Control-V to put it in my notes field. Okay? Just so you know, that's how that works. Notes are automatically in italics. We don't have control over what the notes look like today. They're going to be in Calibri, the same as the response. They're going to be, if the response is in bold, they're going to be in bold. If the response is in 12 or 15, the notes are going to be in 15, so on and so forth. But the notes do appear in italics today. Okay, we have an open item on that to give us more options in viewing our notes, translations, and transcriptions. Okay, so yes, that's how we take a note today. We have asked for the ability to right-click and add to notes. We don't have that yet. Okay. One of the things that I suggest to most people is to go in and customize this to work the way you want, and then go and right-click on a response and look at what each one of these options do. You know, there's a lot of things that we can do with the response right-click menu, and the help system is very good on this. And as a matter of fact, the help system, let's see if it's, oh, it was working right just last week. My help system is actually acting a little funky, but the help system will actually allow you to, it gives you access to all of these cool things right there in the help system. Well, that's fun. What have I done now? Might just have to start over. So Julie, what other questions did we have while my screen's refreshing here?
There we go. Can you take 1 minute and show the single response coding?
Oh, sure.
But there's a specific question. If you just apply a code and then show how to remove a previously coded answer.
Okay. All right. So let's say I'm coding here, and I'm coding. There we go. And I'm coding. And then I code, and I didn't want to apply that. I wanted to actually apply a different code to that. What I do is right-click, remove last codes applied. And it will highlight that last code, and I hit OK, and it removes it. A couple things about that. What it doesn't do is bring that response back up for us to code it immediately. Also, if I've applied more than one code, and then I right-click, remove last codes applied, it removes just one at a time. Okay, so notice I'm still bringing up this response all right? So just note that, and this is something that we're in discussions about making this better in one of our updates, so that we can remove or at least bring up that response and remove the other codes that are applied to it instead of doing it one at a time. But that is how we do it. Right-click, remove last codes applied, and it removes the code that's highlighted in green, and you hit OK. All right? Is that what they were talking about, Julie?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, great.
That's fine, Laura. Are we going to do another webinar on regular expressions?
You know, I didn't schedule any specific webinars this time, but I'm happy to cover that. What I'm going to do in the advanced sessions is just address what the people in that session would like to address. So if we want to do more regular expression webinars, absolutely come to one of the Thursday sessions, and we'll do a session on regular expressions. It just seemed that people wanted people wanted sessions at certain times and certain places. This way, it just made it a little easier than just having one regular expressions webinar. We can cover it in all the sessions if we need to.
Okay, that's good. I know we're past our time, but if you have another minute, can you show something about shared code books, or would you rather do that in the advanced session?
Sure, I can show a shared code book real quick. If anybody needs to go, they can go ahead and go. But yes, so what is the question? Is it
okay,
just?
Yes. Can you just show how to get your shared question up?
Sure. Okay.
Good.
So let's go in. I'm going to go into Q11 under bar 1, and I'm going to navigate into Ascribe Coder. First, note that Q11 under bar 1 is shared with 7 questions. If I click here, you'll see the 7 questions that it's shared with. If I wanted to unshare it, which I'm not going to do, I'd click this unshare button, and then Q11 under bar 1 would be severed from the other 7. All right, so I'm going to navigate into Ascribe Coder. And right now, notice that I'm only seeing the responses from Q11 under bar 1. There are 108 of them. Okay? All right. I have the option on the little question icon to bring over any of the other shared codebook questions. All right? I hit OK. I could bring over one, or I could bring over all. In this case, I brought them all over. So they're all listed down here at the bottom. All right? So now there's 1,135 responses. Okay? So when I bring up those responses, it's going to bring up responses, and this is when I do like to show my question ID information. It's going to bring up responses from those different questions. Okay? So I can do that manually, again, using the From Shared Codebook icon. But also, I have this option to say when starting. So when I open up Ascribe Coder for a question that comes from a shared codebook, I can bring in all the responses from questions that share a codebook within this study. And I can do that by question type. Most of the time, we'll just have all of those selected. So if I turn this on, it sticks for whatever question I'm in whichever study. So what this is basically saying, it's like the From Shared Codebook option that we have in Review Responses. When we toggle that on, we're always showing the responses from Shared Codebook within that particular study. And that's exactly what this does. It's just like toggling on the From Shared Codebook option in Review Responses. So that every time I come in to a shared codebook question, it will automatically bring in all the responses from my 7 shared questions. If I then wanted to say, you know what, I don't want to see 4 and I don't want to see 5, I can manually change that so that now I'm not seeing 4 and 5. But if I go back out to questions and then come back in, it will revert back to showing me all the responses from shared codebooks. Okay, that's the piece that I want to make sure you understand. That that option to automatically bring them in, you're either bringing in only the one question or all the shared codebooks. It doesn't remember what you last chose from the questions icon here. Well, there we go. All right, does that cover that, Julie?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Has anything else come up?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for bearing with me with a couple of technical difficulties today. Again, please go in and use Ascribe Coder and let us know if you do have any questions or suggestions, or anytime that you need to go to Review Responses or the Single Response Coder interface or edit the codebook. We'd love to hear about that so that we can make sure that by June we've got everybody happily and merrily coding productively in Ascribe Coder. Okay? Thanks so much. And again, I'm grateful that everybody took time out of their day to attend this session. The Thursday sessions will be more advanced, and they will be focused on the things that people want to talk about. So look forward to seeing you there. Have a great day.